Hi folks. Birkin asks, what do you think about the Satori experience? Isn't it an experience of non-duality in limited body consciousness? Yeah, Satori is a term I've heard of. It comes from Buddhism. It's similar to Kensho. I've heard it described as the apprehension of the true nature of reality. Right. But it's an interesting way you've worded the question. Isn't it an experience of non-duality in limited body consciousness? Right. Do a little experiment with me here, a little thought experiment. Right, imagine we're both sitting in a room. Not just you, Birkin, but anybody who's listening, right? Imagine it's me and you, and we're both sitting in a room. And we're experiencing just ordinary waking consciousness. But you've been doing your spiritual homework, right, for years, maybe for decades. You've been meditating, and you've been reaching for something other than just this, right? You've been reaching for, let me find it again, an experience of non-duality in limited body consciousness, which is something other than just this, right? So, okay, I haven't been doing anything, but I understand that I'm the ground of being. I understand that there is no separate self inside the head. That understanding is in place, it's deep. It's a felt reality in the sense that I intuitively know it to be true as deeply as I know the reality of the legs that I use to walk with. You know, it really is that clear to me that the universe is non-dual. There are no separate selves anywhere. There's no objects anywhere. It all flows together as a single essence. It's one, I don't want to say one thing. That's a crude term because thing implies things. Essence is better. Think of the universe as a multitude of relationships all flowing together. So, I get it, right? I'm the ground of being. Pretty sure you get it too. You acknowledge that there's no self inside here, just like you acknowledge that there's no self inside your head either. I like to think of it more as an aperture. The universe experiences consciousness through this limited aperture of body-mind. It's doing it here, it's doing it there. There's no actual object called the self. We both get it, right? We both get it. But you're looking for something else called Satori, an experience of it, whatever that would be. So, maybe you've studied under various teachers or gurus, tried various meditation techniques, practiced for years, and something's coming. You can feel it, some altered state of consciousness. You've done it, right? And let's say you're sitting there in front of me meditating, and I'm not meditating, you're meditating, and you've entered this thing you think is Satori. And in that state of mystical awareness, you say to me, Darl, I've achieved Satori. And I say, well, it's not happening here. Okay, it's happening there. It's not happening here. So who has achieved Satori? Think about that question. Who has achieved Satori? Because it's not happening here, but it's happening there, and there is no separate self. Right? This is hard to wrap your head around. And people who listen to me sometimes think, oh, Darrell, you're only getting halfway there. You haven't had the mystical experience yet. You only got half of it. Whereas I have not only had the mystical experience in the past, and we'll get to that in a minute. I've got past it right back to ordinary awareness, and I've realized that I'm already home. Right? Who is experiencing Satori? Because you've already acknowledged that Darrell is the ground of being. Just like Birkin is the ground of being. But Darl isn't isn't experiencing the mystical state that you're experiencing. So, who is experiencing it? Birkin, the separate self, so-called. Right? Because the so-called separate self, Darl Sloan, isn't experiencing. Do you get what I'm saying here? You're still in limited body consciousness. It's just you're now having an interesting altered state of consciousness within body consciousness. There is no way to get out of this to actual non-duality, because that actual quest is a failure to understand that there's nothing but non-duality. This is non-duality. If I start banging my head off that desk and experiencing pain, that's an experience of non-duality, because there's nothing else, right? So there are basically two camps. There's the camp that feels something must be done, and we must do our spiritual homework to get it done, whatever that is, but it's not this. We got to get out of this. And quite often it's accompanied by the desire to escape suffering, which is another mistaken side road on this thing. And then there's the other camp, which is the nothing needs to be done camp. There's the camp that realizes you're already home. And that's where you need to get to. So the people, it frustrates me because people have had mystical experiences and they think they're ahead of me on some kind of spiritual quest. Whereas I know they're stuck. They're stuck on a thing that they need to get past. And then they finally might realize, oh, right, nothing actually needed to be done. You see, you can picture yourself, being someone who learns meditation, studies under various teachers, does it for decades, and then you're like maybe 65, and finally something opens up, you're 65. But remember, whatever that opening up is, it's still happening as an experience of limited body consciousness, because it can't be anything else, because it ain't happened to me, right? Me, okay? It's only happening to you. You see, so you're 65, let's say, when this happens, and you don't know it yet, but you're going to die at 70. So you've done all this homework, all of this time invested, time that you could have been spending learning the guitar or anything. Not to put down people who meditate, right? It's fine if you want to do that. But, you get to 65. Now you've got 5 years to enjoy this altered brain state that you've managed to discover. And you die. Was it really all... Was all that training for decades just to get you to a point where you could sit and experience bliss and serenity? As long as nobody breaks into your house and stabs you, of course. That would interrupt bliss and serenity, wouldn't it? So, it's a valid point, isn't it? You're not in control of everything. It seems like a raw deal to me to do all that, to get to a point where you're old and you've achieved something and now you're just going to die. And what was the point in that? So what was it all for? It appears to be so that the action figure, the illusory separate self, could have some kind of experience and then die. But why do people chase that? It seems to me there's just something a bit naive about chasing that. And it really is a failure to get comfortable in your own skin, comfortable with ordinary awareness with all of its difficulties and all of its unsavory thoughts and the things that we experience despite understanding non-duality, the anger that we sometimes experience. See, what do we mean when we use a word like spirituality? Well, the word spirit means breath or wind. And it's the idea that there's something you can't see, something ineffable underneath everything. And that's fine. But it seems like this non-duality quest that people go on, the quest to change consciousness, it seems very self-centered to me. It's funny to me, it's all about getting away from the self, but it's entirely self-centered. Because it's not about helping people. How about spirituality having something to do with helping people? Because there's a big suffering world out there. And I'm not putting myself up as some kind of example here, because I'm not especially kind. And I'm tribal in my thinking. I think that's natural for the human race. But at the same time, we all know that we could get together and be of help to our fellow man. Right? Someone who's suffering. And I think, much as I've criticized Christianity over the years, I think at least people like that are good at getting together and organizing things and being of help in the local community. Now, if I compare that kind of spirituality with all the problems that go with monotheism, plenty on that in my other videos, but if I compare that to the sort of spirituality that is just about, oh, I want to just sit in my room and cross my legs and meditate and not deal with anything, and just get out of this limited body awareness for me. You know, it's incredibly selfish. I would much rather be a person whose idea of no self involves trying to be helpful to other people, being less self-centered in my actions because I have no particular self here to defend or to, you know, it makes no sense to me to accumulate wealth senselessly because, well, what am I going to do with it? I have no desire to buy a sports car or something like that, you know. I do have money in savings, but that's purely a retirement fund. I have just no desire to be extravagant with it. And I do think that comes from my sense of spirituality. But I'm not putting myself up as an example of somebody who's particularly virtuous with his actions. I'm not. I could be better. But I know that me deciding to sit in a room and learn to meditate deeply, to disconnect myself more from the community around me, that's not the kind of spirituality that I want. So, not really that interested in altered states of consciousness. I am experiencing non-duality just fine, just the way I am. Alright? Be very wary of people who give you spiritual homework. Alright folks, take care.